So we all know what it feels like to feel overwhelmed or tired, okay? So that's not burnout necessarily. Burnout is like an emotional exhaustion where sleeping doesn't take care of it. Even the hobbies that you do to,
Mm.
re-energize yourself, you might not even want to do hobbies. You feel like you have nothing to offer anyone, students, parents, community. Maybe you even actually find yourself avoiding parents or students, kind of like,
Mm.
I don't want to talk to anyone. Just let me go to bed forever and pull the covers over my head and never
Mm.
emerge.
In this episode, Ruth Anna Kuhns comments on burnout among school teachers. We expect that some of the things she says may sound strange to some of our audience. As you listen, understand this as a focus on the experience of school teachers in conservative Mennonite schools. Many conservative Mennonite churches have their own schools that serve the children of member families. These schools are often very small and function differently and have a much smaller budget than is typical for the public schools of North America. Though this is an inside look, we expect that much of what she says will be applicable to those who work in large schools, public or otherwise. Okay, now on to the episode. Ruth Anna, so you've worked in education for a
Yes.
while, right? And you we'd been talking on the phone before, kind of okay, what should we have on the podcast and what topics? And you had mentioned you went through a period of prolonged burnout because
Hmm.
as a teacher and had to take a break. And that made me really start thinking about, well, obviously what your story might be with that, but also issues around teacher sustainability. Like it seems like
Hmm.
there's a lot of turnover, and this is something that I've heard from a lot of places that this is a thing. And so I'd like to maybe start with that and see if there's some lessons here for our
Ooh,
audience, right?
yeah.
So if it's all right, let's just start with your experience with burnout as a teacher. Just kind of the rundown. What happened and what was that like?
So there's multiple layers to the question of burnout, and I will talk about my experience. I know that my experience isn't necessarily everyone's experience, but I think there are definitely themes throughout.
Mhm.
So as I reflect on my experience as an educator, so I taught for 5 years, and then I really wanted a broader um, base to pull from. I was realizing some of the needs that are out there. And so I went to Faith Builders for 2 years and did their teacher apprenticeship program, which was very helpful. After graduation, I came back and taught for a period of another 9 years and had a lot of good experiences there. But during the last year that I was working there as a homeroom teacher, um, that's when as I look back, that's really when the burnout piece kicked in.
Mm.
And one piece of it for me was unresolved trauma. I come from a really dark past
Mm.
with yeah, lots of abuse and neglect. And I hadn't really had a safe place to process that. And
Mhm.
so as it started, as I started having flashbacks and nightmares and all of this, I just was like not sure what was going on.
Mm.
And so toward the end of that year, my principal said to me, "Well, Ruthanna, would you consider taking a year off?" And that was a completely new question for me. I
Mm.
It shows you how much I was surviving because I did not
Mhm.
even
Mhm.
have the mental space to think, well, is there another option here? So that 1 year turned into 4 years off.
Mhm.
Um, and there were a lot of good things that happened during those 4 years. It was also really hard because I didn't feel like I had the emotional energy to continue teaching and doing the work of trauma therapy. And so I did some really intense trauma therapy for a few years. Um, and that helped to resolve that piece of trauma. I still deal with PTSD.
Mm.
PTSD stands for post traumatic stress disorder. Um, I still deal with flashbacks and nightmares, but um, I've learned how to cope with it, and so there's a really redemptive ending to that story. So that's like one piece of my story with burnout.
Mm.
The other piece is, as I look back and reflect, is everything that was on my plate as a teacher. When I started listing, um, all the things that I was involved in, I kind of went, "Wait, this is making me tired just listing it all."
Oh, that's not a good sign.
Exactly.
Oh.
And I think in the moment, I don't think I knew that it was okay to ask for help. I was
Hmm,
thinking, "Well,
okay.
yeah, I'm a teacher. This is just what teachers do. They just,
Mhm,
do the next thing." And teach classes that they don't enjoy, but you do it because, well, you're the one that can.
mhm,
Um,
mm,
yeah. So I would say just like a really heavy workload also led to finally my body saying, I can't do this anymore.
mhm, mhm.
And so that was really devastating because, I'm that kid who was like decided in first grade that I wanted to be a teacher.
Oh, wow.
And so this is like
Okay.
my lifelong dream. And suddenly at the end of that school year,
Mm,
thankfully the school board released me from my commitment for the next year. I had already committed to teaching for next year. They released me from my contract if that could help with
mm.
my healing process.
So that's some of the pieces from your own story, and let's
Yes.
broaden it out a bit. What are some of the things that lead to burnout in teachers? Just in general, like I'm sure you've noticed some common threads here, right? Over the years. Yeah, list some of those.
That is a great question. Okay, so I think um, to help us understand this, let's think a little bit about a teacher who is in your, typical school, small school, maybe 60 to 70 students, or it could be smaller schools, 20 to 30.
Mhm,
And let's think about some of the things that they might be involved in. Okay.
mhm,
So it's very possible that they're teaching multiple grades. All right. So let's say if you're teaching 3 grades and only you might have 9 students. Okay, but that's still 3 math lessons to prep for, 3 language lessons.
mm,
And if you're not combining classes, maybe 3 science, 3 history, like it just gets to be a lot of prep.
yeah.
It's possible that they're teaching all of their classes, so even music, art, Bible. Um, they might be doing all of the recess duty with their students. They might not have a lot of downtime during the day. I know for me, sometimes I just need 10 minutes to breathe so I can actually
Yeah.
be present with my
Mhm,
students. Um, and on top of that, let's say the school day ends at 3. They might have 2 to 3 hours of grading after that. I know I talked to one of my friends, who said, "I sat down at 3 o'clock and I said, 'Now my second day starts.'"
mm,
And, 3 hours of grading. Well, when do you have time for prep?
mm,
Um, oh, no, I'm not done yet. This is just the beginning.
mm.
They may be planning all of the field trips for, their classes. They may planning all the class parties. They might be prepping programs, both fall and spring. Perhaps they're even working some in administration. So you have your own homeroom, but then you're like the elementary education principal yet
Mhm,
as well.
mm,
So then you're expected to be the expert in any learning disability. Okay, so again, that's a whole subject on its
mm,
own. Um, they might be arranging chapel speakers, answering phones, communicating about transportation differences, car rides, bus rides. They're teaching children to read. Somewhere they're supposed to do lesson prep. And again, if they have a couple years of experience, they might be training in new teachers. And then you're supposed to have energy to come up with like amazing ideas for like community week or missions week.
mm.
Do you get the feeling? It's just a lot going
Yeah.
on.
Fragmentation is the word that comes to mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can we just back up a bit, define that? Like, what do we
Yes.
mean when we have burnout, but then again, I'm thinking specifically for the teachers themselves.
Right, right. Okay. So, yeah, let me define that a little bit. So we all know what it feels like to feel overwhelmed or tired. Okay. So that's not burnout necessarily. Burnout is like an emotional exhaustion where sleeping doesn't take care of it. Even the hobbies that you do to, re energize yourself, you might not even want to do hobbies. Okay. That's one example. You feel like you have nothing to offer anyone, students, parents, community. Maybe you even actually find yourself avoiding parents or students, kind of like, I don't want to talk to anyone. Just let me go to bed forever and pull the covers over my head and never emerge. Okay. Um, you may have felt like you just kind of lost your vision for teaching. Like,
The spark is gone.
right.
Yeah.
There's like the joy factor is gone. Um, and when you encounter a problem, it can feel like almost like you're paralyzed, like I can't even troubleshoot this. I don't know how to think creatively about how to solve this. You see how that is different from just being tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, some of these thoughts I am drawing from a presentation that I listened to. Arlen Nisley was presenting to experienced teachers, and he talked about burnout and defined some of these things, and it really connected with me because burnout is real, and I think the key to burnout is rest. That doesn't mean that you're inactive, but it is a creation principle in scripture.
Yeah.
And so if you're working 7 days a week, like that's not what we've been created to do. So I think we've got to be really intentional about taking time off, and doing self-care types of things. One of the ways that I think about avoiding burnout sometimes is at the end of the week, I will think, okay, what did I do this week that was not absolutely necessary for survival?
I like that. That's good.
Yes. Yes.
Mm. Hmm.
So there are, I think, different layers to burnout. I just described the workload of perhaps your typical teacher in a typical school. So I think workload can lead to burnout. Sometimes it's lack of support. I know as a homeroom teacher, it can feel difficult to get the support that you need if your principal is also a homeroom teacher, or the administration, they also have a homeroom. And so if you have an issue, let's say during the day, um, and you go to them for help, well, then you're disrupting their classroom. And so like there's just when there's not enough of adults to take care of the children, that lack of support can be pretty key. And I think also lack of self-care, um, not taking time to do my hobbies, hunting, hunting is not my hobby, but I'm thinking like hunting, fishing, going on hikes or trips, travel, volleyball, like those things are important. That helps sustainability. And I think another piece to burnout is when we constantly exceed our limits. So those are a few factors as I was thinking about the whole issue of burnout. I think those are some factors that cause burnout.
So I don't work in the education space at all. So, but just looking from the outside in, it seems like there's a lot of teacher turnover and some
Mhm.
issues with sustainability, right? If constant staff turnover, something's happening there. So how can our communities help make this whole situation more sustainable? And when I say that, I'm thinking specifically for the teachers themselves. Maybe there's other elements to consider, but let's stay focused on that.
Mhm.
How can our communities get involved?
Yes. Okay, so one thing I would say initially is make sure your teachers have enough help. And immediately that's going to what some of you are thinking is, well, we don't have the budget for that. All right, folks,
Exactly.
we have got to get past the budget.
But
Okay?
okay, why is it? I mean, this is just to the point where it's just pop culture almost that like underpaid, overworked defines a teacher's like
Yes.
anywhere. And I'm not just saying in our Anabaptist schools. That just feels like a universal thing. I don't really understand that. I've never understood that, but it becomes just almost assumed.
Yes.
But
Yes.
anyways,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So, make sure they have enough of help. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to describe my current school situation.
Mhm.
I feel like at my current school, I've been able to have lots of spaces for healing because of some of the things that I've experienced. So, a couple things that are key for me at my current school is I have lots of support from admin. So we do have a principal, we have a secretary, we also have an elementary director of education. And so I'm not in homeroom, but I'm in learning support. But I know there are people that I can go to talk to throughout the school day who aren't in homeroom. And if I need to just troubleshoot for 10 minutes, there's someone there to talk to.
Mm.
Um, at my school, we have a person who does all the art, teaches all the art, a person who teaches all the music. And so that gives homeroom teachers some pockets of time throughout their day where they
Mm.
can just regroup a little bit. There are teachers' aides that we have, um, and they can help with the grading piece. I think I mentioned grading can take hours for some teachers.
Mm.
So why aren't we hiring teachers' aides to help out with the grading? And even if you're in a small school, I think we can still think creatively about these things. Um, who can we ask to help us out?
Mhm. Mhm. Bringing more tangible pieces of support onto the scene, is that
Yes.
a way of saying it? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Um, And there's also the financial piece, let's
Yeah.
face it. Okay, so I'm obviously going to be advocating for single women.
Mhm.
But let's say you have a 25-year-old single lady and you say, well, we're paying her well. She's making 20 grand a year.
Mhm.
Um, okay, well, is she going to be able to buy a house on
Mm.
that salary? I mean, would you want to live on that salary?
Mm.
And so like thinking about some of those things, like is this sustainable for her to do financially? I mean, it's really a shame when she says, well, you know what, if I went to Sheets, I could make double what I make here.
Mm.
Like, do we care about investing in our teachers? And if we don't care, it's no wonder that we're going through teachers like water.
Yeah.
With that amount of workload, we burn them right out.
Mm. Yeah, you used a word there, I think that was important, invest in the teachers, right?
Yes.
Thinking of it as an investment, I guess. I
Right.
like that way of framing it.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
So we were talking about, okay, how can we make things more sustainable and
Hmm.
avoid some of these things with teacher turnover, for example? As people are listening to this, what is one thing they can do practically to help support teachers, to help
Hmm.
with this situation, to get involved, and to contribute?
That is such a good question. So yeah, let's just talk about some really practical things.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I know from an educator perspective, these things mean so much to me. So this morning I walked into my classroom and there was an iced coffee, cold brew, caramel on my desk, ready to go. And I
Oh.
thought, this is the perfect way to begin my Friday. And it was our director of elementary education just, treating the teachers. Okay, that can seem like a really small thing, a
Mhm.
coffee. It means so much. Like in the past, I've had parents, stop in and, maybe they'll give me a coffee or a hot chocolate or something. It means so much. It means that we're seen and
Mm.
that's huge. So that's a really practical thing. Yeah, I think, if your school has an opportunity for room moms, like where a couple moms can get together and let's say they will plan class parties or be responsible for, planning field trips. That's a huge load off the homeroom teacher. You can ask, your homeroom teachers like what their favorite food is and, pack their lunch occasionally. It's these small acts of service that just go such a long way. And, maybe you're one of those people who says, okay, what would it mean for me to show up at school, once a week and have the teachers train me on recess duty? And then I'll be
Hmm.
out, supervising the children. And, it's always a perk when especially in the younger grades, their mom shows up and it's just, that connection as well.
Yeah.
And they might not realize like that 15 minutes gave me as a teacher like time to regroup. I again had some time to breathe. I had some
Mhm.
time to, if I was dealing with a difficult student in the morning, some time to just like focus again on, okay, what am I working with? And, just kind of refocus, regroup, rethink. Because as educators, we really do want to be our best selves for our students.
Mhm. That's really neat. That's like, little tangible ways of
Yes.
in telling the teachers in your life that, "Hey, we see you, we appreciate you."
Right.
We like, um, otherwise, I wonder, could it be this sense of, "I'm here teaching these kids and I feel really alone and nobody notices and nobody sees me?"
Right.
Is there some of
Right.
that could happen?
That
Yeah.
can be a very real struggle in teaching. And that really saddens me as well because, like, there's really something that gets lost, like in the school culture, if we are just in our own classrooms, we're just little kingdoms unto ourselves, doing our own thing.
Yeah.
That hurts the school culture. But as a teacher, that can feel really, really lonely as well.
Yeah. Wow.
And so we need community, we need support, we need parents, we need school boards. Um, and we need school boards and administrators who are passionate about paying their teachers well so
Mhm.
that they can actually live on what they make.
Mhm. Mhm. So as we look back over the material that we've covered in this, kind of bringing it all together, is there anything else you would like to leave the audience with as we wrap this episode up?
Mhm. So I've given some tangible things there as well, but never underestimate the power of praying for your teachers, principal, secretary, administrators. Um, that means so much to have a group of people who are really bringing us before the Lord in prayer, because it
Mhm.
is education and working with students. It's a big responsibility, and it's not something that I take lightly. And so we do
Mhm.
need you. We need
Mhm.
everyone to yeah, help make this successful.
Mhm. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing and bringing your own personal experience and, yeah, giving us some pieces to work with here. I think there's gonna be a lot here for listeners to they should take note of, and maybe this will cause some changes in ways people can better, well, communities can come around and support schools and teachers better. So, yeah, I really appreciate this.
Thank you for inviting me. I always love when I'm invited to speak about things that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode with Ruth Anna. We did a two-part series with Joel Yoder on the topic of burnout, which I think you'll find interesting. You can find that links down in the description below. We also publish regular monthly essays as well as a monthly email newsletter, and you can subscribe to both of those on our website at anabaptistperspectives.org. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.